As we've been covering, the longest shutdown in U.S. history has officially ended. And joining us now to discuss is Madeline Summerville, Democratic strategist, speechwriter, and attorney. We also have Angie Wong, Republican strategist and political columnist. Good to have you both here today. Angie, we'll start with you. What was achieved in this funding measure passed by the House and Senate that Americans had to endure 43 days of shutdown?
Yeah, absolutely nothing was achieved other than to show that Republicans were always going to offer this deal to hear about ACA subsidies and Obamacare and doing an extension, but only after we had a clean budget passed. And that's all we wanted from the very get-go. October 1 until now didn't have to happen this way, right? All those cards were already on the table. We were ready to talk to Democrats about health care, but only when it was time to, after that a very critical extension of our budget was passed. So nothing was achieved other than to show that, Democrats was using this as a political leverage all along. And that's where they failed. That's why they're going after Chuck Schumer right now, asking him to resign, because at the end of the day, they held out for nothing. But meanwhile, American suffers. Babies did not get their subsidies. I was stuck at, the airport for hours on end, and as many Americans were. Our flights were canceled or delayed. We didn't have to suffer all of this, but at the end of the day, it didn't really prove anything at all. 43 days was a very, very long time. And I'm very happy to see the government reopen again. Federal workers are waiting for their back pay. We should get that out to them immediately. And also, we'd love to see air travels. We would love to see planes in the air again, especially right before the Thanksgiving weekend travel begins.
Well, thanks for that, Angie. And of course, we know that there is another deadline coming up in the near future in which there has to be some resolution at some point. Now, Madeline, I'd like to give you a chance to respond to your co-panelists and also mentioning how Trump said that Democrats, quote, this was an easy extension, but that they didn't want to do it the easy way. They had to do it the hard way. Any thoughts?
Sure. And I'm always happy to respond to my lovely co-panelist, Angie Wong. It's cool that we can be friends outside of politics. I just wanted to let everyone know that it's possible. So I don't think that the shutdown was for nothing, right? And I am very happy that people are willing to let Chuck Schumer go at this point. I want a whole new set of leadership, Pelosi, Jeffries, everyone. So I'm not here to defend Chuck Schumer in any way. I think that it was time to reopen the government. I think that people got the message. It came at a time that was during these elections when we needed to feel that energy as Democrats. And I think that it communicated what it needed to not just the base, because the base needed to understand that their representatives were going to hold out for something that they believed in. But I think it also tipped a few other voters who may have been swaying towards Trump back into this direction. Because I think that the framing of the Democrats don't care about you because they won't open the government. They don't care if you get your food stamps. They don't care if you get access to what you need was obviously false, because the Democrats were trying to fight for something important and real. And I think people bought it. And that's one of the reasons why the Democrats did so well in this recent election. So I think the point was made. It's time to open the government back up. I think that we were finally at the end of our rope here, right, where people were just like, I can't take this anymore. And it was about to turn on them. So I think the point was made and it was the right time to open it back up.
So, Madeline, I understand what you're saying. Now, for people who are behind those fights, that what they want to accomplish, they didn't get it. Is it the thought that counts, though, or is it just the fact that they held to it for so long, even though it didn't amount to anything?
Yeah, that's totally a fair question. And I unfortunately agree with you, even though your phrasing, it makes it sound very sad, which is the thought that counts, right? Because I do think that people have been impressed by things that seem to be silly, right? Like Gavin Newsom taking on Donald Trump and ramping up his voice in response to him. But in doing so, right, he's cognitively put himself on the same playing field as Donald Trump. These are little things that actually count for a lot. Or like the Democrats walking out in Texas, right? They're demonstrating we're willing to fight for you. And this isn't something that we've seen in the past. And I think that if they had held out any longer, the tides would have turned on them. I don't think they had a choice. And so yes, and I knew the House was going to open up. I knew Jeffries was going to cave. 100%, it was absolutely going to happen. And I understand why my Democratic colleagues are frustrated. And it makes sense that I would disagree with what they're saying, because I usually disagree with them, even though mine is now in support of what the Democrats are doing. But I think that Overall, the point was made that needed to be made. We just didn't have the resources or time, and the people didn't have what they needed in order to be able to keep going.
Thanks for that insight, Madeline. And Angie, on that note, President Trump has said that the big swing, I mean, you saw New Jersey and the Virginia governor's race go hard to the Democrats, and, well, one seat was flipped. Now, what is the messaging surrounding this shutdown, and how could it impact the midterms? Of course, we hear Democrats saying that they need to claw back some of those benefits that they say the Republicans are taking away and so on.
Well, certainly the shutdown and also last week's election has framed the midterms coming up next year. Affordability, I've never heard that word more used in the last week. So clearly Trump has now regeared, and he's talking about making the American dream a lot more affordable for Americans again. And I think now that the government's reopened, he can start doing that. Remember, his big, beautiful bill addresses this very issue. He wants to bring the cost of gas and groceries and insurance down for all Americans. He wants to bring mortgages down as well. He's floating several ideas about mortgage reform out there, which I love, as well as auto loans. So he's tackling all these things because he realizes, wow, last Tuesday was a loss for Republicans, even though I wouldn't call it a blue wave because a lot of these states were already blue and they just won again in a blue state. But that is certainly, it gave President Trump and his team a pause for the midterms because President Trump wants a full 4-year presidency, not a 2-year where he has to fight the House or the Senate. He wants everyone on board to get the entire America First agenda all the way through the 4 years without too much of a fight. So I think that's what the last 2 weeks has taught us between the shutdown as well as last Tuesday's election.
And Angie, thanks for helping our viewers understand any pivots that may be happening in Trump's agenda. I mean, we know the MAGA agenda was centered on affordable gas prices, unleashing American energy. But there may be some tweaks that you're alluding to. Madeline, how do you respond to what your co-panelist is saying?
Yeah, I tend to think that actually President Trump's intentions are different than those of the people behind him. I think that there's a lot of evidence to indicate that President Trump does want all of these prices to go down. I think he wants to give the people what they want, to put it plainly. That's been reflected in reproductive rights, his decisions on that. It's been reflected in a lot of his policies where he looks at the polls, he talks to people, and he says, this is what people want. However, right, I think that his attempts to do so are going to fall on deaf ears, especially because he's making things up right now. It's so silly for him to say things like, what do you mean affordability? Like things are the best that they've ever been under Trump. He's very reluctant to use that word affordability because he knows that that's working for the Democrats. And he's willing to make things up about what the truth is in terms of the economy so that he can reinforce the position that Trump is the best and he's always been the best and always will be the best. But the American people are not buying it if you look at the polls. So I do agree. I think that it might be his intentions, but he's not going to get his way by lying to people about it.
Madeline, affordability is certainly a major aspect to all of this. I mean, you have cumulative inflation hitting Americans with 20% more of these prices. So, I mean, it adds up, definitely. Now, we may have some feed coming in, so I just want to let you all know that we may be cutting to that in a moment. But Angie, if we still have a moment, with funding only extended to January, what do you think will happen this time? Is there another shutdown possible that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, January 30th is just around the corner, and there could be another shutdown if we don't get this right. We have between now and remember, and we also have a major break in the middle of that for the holidays as well. So Congress will be out of session for a lot of those dates. I have no doubt that given what we just went through, Americans cannot face another shutdown, certainly not for 40 plus days. We can't keep doing this round and round. It is the definition of insanity if we do. I do hope that our houses, our lawmakers can get it together and actually pass something for real this time. And John Thune had already promised Democrats that we're going to talk about the ACA. We're going to talk about the Affordable Care Act and try to get that through. Again, that should be put on the floor for a vote, and we'll see what happens there, but there's no guarantees either. But I suspect that if Democrats don't get what they want in mid-December, that they're going to pull all of this again on January 30th and put all Americans through another shutdown. And that's what I want to forewarn everybody. Let's not even walk down that pathway. Let's get it done before the holidays. Let's get everyone paid and get this government completely opened.
Well, Angie and Madeline, thank you for sharing your deep understanding with us. Hopefully it can benefit the American people having this think tank. And right now we're going to cut to President Trump. So thank you both for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.